Good afternoon, everyone. This week marks 3 weeks since COVID-19 began to spread throughout our state. It's difficult to even imagine how something so unfathomably small as a virus can cause so much devastation, grief, heartbreak, and fear. Suddenly, we could no longer breathe easily. Suddenly, we were afraid to hug our loved ones, and we were afraid not to. In those early days, we lived in fear that every breath and every hug might be our last. But in those fearful early days, we also lived in a state of compassion and community like never before. Friend helping friend, neighbor helping neighbor. Arizonans always find a way to thrive in the harshest of circumstances. In those early days of the pandemic, we found solace and purpose in supporting each other. As Mr. Rogers would say, we looked for the helpers. We found in ourselves and in our communities a collective power and a shared purpose. This is a place I believe we desperately need to get back to. I'm so grateful to you, Kristen, for your vision and leadership to do just that. As a social worker, I've committed my life to bearing witness to the hardest days, but also to helping those experiencing those hard days to find hope. Today, we celebrate our shared resiliency and the promise for a better future. My commitment to you, as we honor those lost, is to fight like heck for a better tomorrow. We were unprepared for this pandemic. We won't be for the next one. For years, our state has neglected public schools, public services, and public health. We cannot and will not allow this to go on any longer. We will fortify our classrooms. My goal is to ensure that today's students have the critical thinking skills they need to succeed in math, science, and reading, so that our children can root out misinformation, make sound decisions about their health, and become the next generation of helpers. We are investing in bioscience research and manufacturing, so tomorrow's healthcare workforce can quickly detect and respond in a public health crisis. And we are enthusiastically committed to trusting science. Kristen, thank you for your passion, for inspiring us all by converting your morning into momentum, for reminding all of us that, despite our fear, we can do great things together. To every Arizonan who has been marked by COVID, I promise you, we are going to do better. As we reflect on resiliency and hope, let's follow Kristen's lead and bounce forward, not back. And now it is my honor to present a proclamation declaring COVID Memorial Day. Whereas the first Monday in March is an appropriate day to be designated annually as COVID-19 Victims and Survivors Memorial Day, and whereas COVID-19 is an illness caused by a virus that can transmit from person to person and has spread across the world, creating a global pandemic and having catastrophic effects on human life, our community, and our economy. And whereas in March 2020, communities in every state began to lose lives and families began to lose parents, siblings, children, friends, neighbors to the virus. And whereas public health guidance and policies targeted at prevention, such as social distancing, wearing masks in public, and staying home, helped mitigate the spread of COVID-19, prevented illness, and lessened the burden on individuals and society. And whereas local, state, tribal, and federal government entities and public servants took swift action to protect the health of the general public and provided critical support to businesses, communities, and the people of the United States in need. And whereas, in response to rapid spread of COVID-19, its disruptions, of COVID-19 and its disruptions, essential workers stepped up to provide critical services to help protect our communities and save lives, sacrificing their own health and safety. And whereas COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on low-income communities and communities of color, rural and tribal communities, people with disabilities, people with weakened immune systems, unhoused individuals, and those living in congregate settings such as long-term care facilities and prisons, exacerbating systemic inequities and social determinants of health. And whereas COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on the Native American community, with Native Americans losing over 6 years life expectancy, and has caused the incalculable loss of elders who carried with them the community's cultures, languages, and traditions. And whereas COVID-19 fueled a crisis of isolation and loneliness among older adults and residents of long-term and/or residential care facilities, which has had an incalculable impact on the mental health and physical health of individuals already at increased risk of death or severe illness as a result of the virus. And whereas COVID-19 has harmed the health and well-being of veterans, especially those struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder because of the increased isolation, social isolation, and disrupted access to mental health services. And whereas COVID-19 has harmed the health and well-being of children by delaying access to care and health services, disrupting schooling, undermining their sense of safety and security, increasing stress on caregivers, and by tragically robbing millions of children of a parent or caregiver. And whereas the symptoms and severity of COVID-19 can vary dramatically by individual, and the long-term health implications for survivors are largely unknown, as many survivors suffer with long COVID. And whereas more than 6.8 million people worldwide and 1.1 million people in the United States have lost their lives due to COVID-19, and in the state of Arizona alone, more than 33,000 lives have been lost to this deadly virus. And whereas each life lost to COVID-19 mattered and leaves a hole in the hearts of loved ones, family members, and surrounding community. Now, therefore I, Katie Hobbs, Governor of the state of Arizona, do hereby proclaim the first Monday of March as COVID-19 Memorial Day, in remembrance of those marked by COVID, those who have lost their lives, and in honor of those who continue to suffer from the impacts of this virus. Thank you.